Well, hello there folks, how are you? It's Kenneth James Kerr once again, and thank you so much for joining me today in this video. I do appreciate you being here today. Today we're going to take a look at vignette number 6 in this book, Is the Perfect Gift. If you have the paperback, it's on page 14. If you have the hardback, it is page 20. And I'm going to go to my trusty hardback right now and turn it up, and let's read the quotation. The beauty of God's creation is just a hint of the beautiful creation you can make of your life when you connect with the presence of God within you. Let me say it again. The beauty of God's creation is just a hint of the beautiful creation you can make of your life when you connect with the presence of God within you. I think you can tell even from the quotation that today we are going to get into some pretty deep stuff. We really are. I mean, that's an understatement, isn't it? And so I think it's very, very, very important that I set a foundation to begin with, that I set a framework for our discussion today. And that's this. I do not expect every person watching this video to agree with me on the things that I'm going to say today. I don't expect you to agree with me. I don't say, you must see it my way. Similarly, I don't expect that I would agree with every one of you in your views on some of the deep things that we're going to speak about today. One of the amazing things about our world is the fact that we do have different opinions, different beliefs, different traditions, different concepts, different viewpoints, sometimes of the same thing, right? And I think more and more and more we've got to learn to accept our differences and unite on those things that we can find to unite on, instead of immediately judging each other over our differences and going our separate ways with animosity. So today, as we look at some incredibly, incredibly deep subjects, let's not ask for unity in our beliefs of what we see, but let's see if we can find unity in our understanding of the fact that we do all have beliefs. That's very, very important, because I don't want this to be divisive. I don't want us to walk away from this talk saying, that's it, I'm done. No! Let's seek to unite on that which we can unite upon and be understanding, in fact, rejoicing of the differences of opinion that we may have. All right, with that said, and I do believe it's very, very important to say that, let's get into the meat of this particular vignette. Let's start off with something that we can all agree on. The beauty of God's creation. The beauty of God's creation. Now you might say, yeah, but I don't believe in God. I don't believe in creation. Okay, put that a little bit aside for now. The fact that we live in this universe says that it's created. Whether by chance or by choice, it's created, right? So the beauty of this creation. You know, I've had the opportunity over my years to live in some gorgeous places of the world and to travel in some beautiful places of the world. And I hope you've had that opportunity too. I think about some of those places and the beauty is outstanding. For example, Scotland. I was raised in England, Scottish parents, but raised in England, and then later on we moved up to Scotland. But during our years in England, and I was there as a teenager, we used to go up to Scotland for holidays. And I remember the first time that I really got a chance to see the Highlands. Oh, it was unbelievable. I mean, I was raised in the English Midlands, and here we are, and we're taking this drive to the west coast of Scotland. And I remember we turned around this corner and we stopped in a wee lay-by and we looked back and, oh my goodness, we were looking at the Five Sisters of Kintail Mountains. And there was a loch, and then you could see a bit of the land, and then there was a layer of cloud, and then you could see a bit more of the mountain, then there was another layer of cloud, and then you could see the peak and the blue skies above. And it was one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen in my life. I took tons of pictures of it way back then. I turned around and looked at my mum. She was crying. Such was the beauty. Such was the beauty. And later on, we got to live beside Loch Ness as well. And that's absolutely incredible too. Well, I've had the chance to see some other beautiful mountains too. I've driven through the Rockies here in Canada. I've driven back the other way through the Rockies, through Montana in the USA, and looked at some of the most gorgeous peaks that you can ever imagine. I've stood on beautiful beaches. I've walked on beautiful beaches. I've sailed the Caribbean and looked at the azure blue of the ocean and walked on some of the beaches on the gorgeous islands. St. Martin, for example. We live in a beautiful world. And then you stop for a minute on a gorgeous clear night and you look up and your mind gets blown. I did that last night. It was -20, it was cold, but I stood outside for a moment while the dog was doing his stuff, and I looked up and I saw Orion's belt, those 3 stars that you see in Orion's belt. And I looked up and I thought to myself, I wonder how many people are doing this right now. And I wonder how many people through the whole of human history have done what I'm doing right now, looking up at those stars and saying, oh my goodness, look at this. So we do live in an incredible, incredible, incredible creation. The planets, the space, the universe, this earth, this world, our oceans, our mountains, our beaches. I mean, it's just utterly incredible, isn't it? So a question that we're going to ask and seek to answer in a few minutes is this. When you look at all of this beauty, is that the height of creation? Is that the peak of creation? Is that the very summit of creation? Or is there something more? Next big thing to talk about is God. And this is where we're not all going to agree. When you take a look at the concept of God, there are so many different ways of looking at that. For example, there are those individuals, those great faiths of the world, great spiritual traditions of the world, that see God as being identified with a particular identity. So it may be Yahweh, Jehovah, it may be Allah, it may be various other names that different religions give to this being, this entity, but they see God as being wrapped up in a distinct individual personality, and sometimes in a corporate personality as well as a spiritual personality. That's certainly one great viewpoint, great way of looking at this concept of God. There's another concept that says, well, there is something there, but it's kind of unknowable. I think of the beginning, isn't it, of the Tao Te Ching that talks about the Tao that can be named isn't the real Tao. And I'm not a great student of that particular way of looking at it or the Taoist tradition, but it says to me and suggests to me that there's a concept that says there is something, but we don't even try to identify it, don't even try to name it, because the moment you label it, you define it, and you might get it wrong anyway. You'll limit it. There's another view that, of course, talks about God as being the context of everything. I think of that occasion where in the New Testament of the Bible, the Apostle Paul went to Athens and he was preaching and he was talking to them and he quoted something. He said, in him we live and move and have our very being. And I've often asked myself, what if that's true? What if God is actually the context of everything that we see and we are but content? We're the content within this context. In God we live and move and have our being, because God is everything. God is the absolute context of all. And then, of course, there is quantum physics. And someone says, surely you're not saying there's some kind of spiritual concept in physics? Well, yeah, listen, I'll quote, this is another one of my books, Your Number One Relationship. And in there I quote the father of quantum physics, Max Planck. When he received his Nobel Prize, he said this, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as a result of my research about atoms, this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume, behind this force, the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. So the fact of the matter is, there are so many different concepts and ideas of God. And it's so easy to get divided on it, isn't it? It's so easy to get hepped up on the concept of saying, my God is the only God. My view of God is the only right one. Now, I've been there. In most of my teens and all of my 20s, I belonged to an incredibly conservative Christian church. And I was a preacher in that church for many years. A minister of congregations in that church, both in the UK and Canada. And we certainly believed we were the only ones. Didn't just believe that Christianity was the only way, we believed we were the only Christians. We didn't even accept the other Christian denominations. So I know what it's like to get so stuck in a rut of one way of thinking. And my suggestion to you is this: as we talk about God, as we think about God, please, let's do this. Instead of dividing on our individual beliefs of what we believe God to be, what we believe God to say, what we believe to be God's conditions of living, instead of getting stuck and dividing over those things, let's take one step back and say, if we all have a sense of faith, we have faith that there is something greater. We have faith that there's something that undergirds this creation. We have faith that there's something bigger. Then let's unite on that and intelligently discuss our individual beliefs instead of dividing on that. That's so important to me. I believe it is time for us to unite in that starting point of the concept of faith instead of dividing on our beliefs. So again, the beauty of God's creation is just a hint of the beautiful creation you can make of your life when you connect with the presence of God within you. So you've got the beauty of creation that we've talked about. You've got God that we've spoken about, understanding we won't all agree on our concept of what God is, but we may agree that God is. And the question now is, next big subject, you. You. I asked a question a few moments ago, is the physicality of creation the height of creation? Every spiritual tradition says no. Every spiritual tradition that I've certainly looked at seems to suggest or infer that you are the height of God's creation. Humanity, this being, what you see when you look in the mirror. Isn't that incredible? You think about that for a moment. The spark of divinity lives within you. Now again, you can look at different traditions. You can look at some of the creation stories that talk about humanity being formed of the dust of the earth, and then God breathed in to that thing and it became a living soul. Or you can take a look at the ancient texts of our earliest creation concepts and stories of the Sumerians, where the Anunnaki created it, and you look at the modern interpretations of that, not that everybody agrees on it, as being a splicing, a merging at the genetic DNA level of an existing hominid with a being, a race from off-planet. It doesn't matter what you look at, what view you take. It doesn't matter which story you go to, which account you go to. There's a sense in which the very pinnacle of creation is humanity. Now someone might say, oh, that's pretty flipping egotistical. Well, fine, maybe it is. But it's a pretty good way to look at things, isn't it? Because it suddenly elevates you to a whole new being. Now, let's talk about that. The beauty of God's creation, we've talked about that, is just a hint of the beautiful creation that you can make of your life when you connect with the presence of God within you. If mankind is truly a divine creation, no matter what way you look at divinity, a special creation, a special being, a special manifestation, the height of whatever, creation, the height of evolution, the height of design, it doesn't matter what way you look at it. If there is a spark within you and I, a seed within you and I of the divinity of the universe, of the source, again, call it what you will, then that will allow you and I to elevate our game, to elevate our life, to become more beautiful, more incredible, if we seek to connect with that truth. If you just think that you're some kind of meat suit, something that happened by accident, running around, that you live and you die and that's it, then anything goes. But the second you begin to look at your life and say, creation's beautiful, there is something behind this, and I'm the height of it, and there's a bit of that within me because that's part of my nature, because I came from that, then all of a sudden, you're not just by chance. You're not just some kind of elevated animal. You are some kind of very, very, very special being, a spiritual being having a human experience. And again, no matter what tradition you look at, that is something on which we can all unite. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. The very essence of the divine, by whatever definition we employ, lives within us and manifests in us because we manifest through that. Now, you think about the beauty that you can make of your life if you connect with that truth, instead of thinking that everything is just happenstance. I'm telling you, folks, it can change your life. Number one, you can make the decision to foster deliberate contact with the divine. Now, you can do that through a religious tradition. You can go and attend a church. You can go and attend some spiritual fellowship. Whatever it may be, you can make the decision that you are going to investigate the great source of all that is, through a tradition, through a fellowship, through a church, through a religion. And that will make a difference in your life. Following the teachings, the principles, the concepts of it. Following the avatar, the savior, the prophet. It'll make a difference in your life. It'll help you to become more beautiful by doing that. Secondly, you can allow it to infuse within you the belief of your own inherent goodness. Again, a spiritual being having a human experience, something which is eternal, something which goes beyond this life, maybe something that didn't even ever have a birth and that won't have a death, but is merely having right now a temporary experience in a physical shell. You start to think about that. You start to let that sink in, and oh my goodness, it'll blow your mind, it'll blow the cobwebs out your mind, and potentially change your whole life. And a third concept is this. It'll help you deal with other people in a different way too. Because if you see yourself as a spark of the divine, if you see yourself as an eternal spiritual being having a human experience, if you see yourself connected to that which undergirds everything, as the source of everything there is, with personality, intelligence, or whatever, and you learn to foster that connection and follow it, then all of a sudden you look at your fellow human being, and even if they do not believe the same as you believe, you know that you are a kindred spirit. Because they're the same as you, and they just happen to see things in a different way. Therein is unity. Therein is harmony. Therein is the ability to deal with other people in a very, very different way. So let me say it again. The beauty of God's creation is just a hint of the beautiful creation you can make of your life when you connect with the presence of God within you. May you truly have an incredible next few days as you think about this one. We've not even started to plumb the depths of it. You could spend your whole life doing just that. And I would encourage you perhaps to incorporate that within your life. This is Kenneth James Kerr. Namaste, and I will see you in the next video.